So this is a really weird video for me to make because I usually don't say, hey, here's why you should skip out on this banner, or at least I really haven't done that in quite a while because we've had a lot of real big banger servants coming out back to back, and even if they're not the most meta-defining unit, we're kind of in this period of FGO once again where you can kind of use who you like. You know, Summer Melusine, Summer Ibuki, doesn't really matter, they're both really good at the end of the day. I mean, that even extends to Summer Kama and Space Ishtar. If you have them, you don't really necessarily have to swap to Summer Ibuki, especially if you have them at higher NP copies, it's probably fine. We're in a pretty good state of power creep as far as the actual DPS damage units are concerned in FGO. The supports are kind of a different thing to talk about entirely, you know, maybe Quick is being a little left in the dust by the other card types, but again, totally different video for a totally different day. But that's almost not quite the case right now on NA, and especially with this Arjuna Alter banner, I wanted to make this video on why maybe it's not a good idea to summon on this banner. And I kind of made a prequel video to this a couple of days ago, or like, what was it, like a week or so ago? But that was more shilling for Morgan specifically and talking about why she has all of her strengths. In this video, I do want to talk about some of the positives that Arjuna Alter does have and how he will be immediately impactful into your account, but some of the weaknesses that the unit also brings alongside him, and maybe why it won't, I don't want to say age as well, but maybe harder for certain players to use. But as always, if you guys enjoy daily FGO content, make sure you leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment on your thoughts in the comments down below. But after you've heard what I have to say. So, Arjuna Alter, what do we know about him? He is a very, very strong DPS unit. He's an AoE buster guy that has a power mod against debuffs. He applies his own debuff on his NP, and that debuff is a buster down, so he does insanely good damage on pretty much anyone that he's going to be fighting. You can almost start to argue that he gets to like lower single target levels of damage, and it's rather consistent. Now, this can be a bit problematic going into, you know, single target fights or just boss fights in general where there is debuff immunity or high debuff resistance, because then you're not getting the buster debuff down, which again, it turns on the power mod of the first skill, but also gives him extra damage because, you know, he's mainly doing buster attacks, so the buster down is almost free damage on top of the power mod. But then again, you can also just bring somebody else to that fight. You know, it's not like Arjuna Alter is going to be your main go-to DPS for every single fight. He'll be good for most of them because, again, Berserker, you can bring him anywhere. He'll do really good damage, but while it may be a weakness of the unit that he's not going to be super crazy into high debuff resistance boss battles, again, you could just bring anybody else who might be a bit more fitting for the boss encounter. But also talking about where he might be good in some of these boss fights, he does pack himself a nice buster star weight, so he could do strong buster crits, which originally I had more of an issue with because, well, what if you want to crit on the one arts card that he has? Not really an issue anymore because of how Koyenskaya's skills function. She gives him 20% with double Koyenskaya's on each of those buster cards, so he's actually getting decent refund on top of having a 30% battery, plus decent enough survivability with, and this is really funny, the guts is really good. The HP every single turn, I don't really know what they were cooking with that one. Him being a Berserker and getting 2,000 back every single turn, bro, you are losing 6,000 HP every time you get tagged by a stray attack. You are losing way more than that, but I kind of get it. I understand a little bit. Let's try to let him refund a little bit of that, and maybe if there's a taunter or somebody, or you have someone like Waver in your party that's giving you defense plus damage cut, maybe you can kind of cut down on that damage a little bit so the refund of HP is a little bit better. But mainly it's going to be the guts. I don't think I've ever really been saved by the HP every single turn. But I'm spending this time to talk about where he's going to be good in, you know, the single target environments, because you could still use him there. Nobody really talks about bringing Arjuna Alter into these challenge quests because, again, you actually get more out of that buster resistance down because it's a 3-turn buff, or I guess debuff technically. So the more you use him on a single enemy, the more damage you're going to get out of Arjuna Alter, and I would say the more value you're going to get out of him, because that's pretty much the main thing he's doing. While the guts is kind of nice for survivability, let's be honest, it's kind of like slapping a band-aid on a massive gaping wound. It's just going to be enough to get you across the finish line, because pretty much everything that this guy is doing, all of his buffs are primarily trying to make him just mow down the enemy, which, you know, makes sense. It's Arjuna Alter. Given what happened in Lost Belt 4, that's kind of what I would expect him to be able to do. But I wanted to highlight that he would be pretty decent in those areas if you're, say, a newer player that really wants to have someone that could just crush content. he could actually help you out in those areas, because in the farming areas, he might be a little harder to use as he is a 30% battery servant, meaning you're gonna have to put a little bit more effort into using Arjuna Alter. Namely, you're gonna have to go after the append skill, which if you're a bit more on the newer side, that's a lot of extra resources to put into one servant. Now, not that bad if you're planning on making them your main farmer for quite a while, but if you're also going to say pull for Morgan or Kukulkan, who will presumably come out at the end of the year, fingers crossed that they weren't lying about Lost Belt 7 releasing in 2024. If you're going to use one of those two as another one of your farmer, you should probably just pursue them in that case, because them with the 50% batteries are just more convenient to use, and they just feel like less of a hassle to have to use. And I know that that's not that big of a deal for, more mid to high range accounts. You've got all this extra material, and doing an append skill is not that big of a deal. Maybe you do have a maximum broken K-scope so you can make it work really easily, or, you have all the really good 50% starting charge CEs, but I'm assuming all of those players are not watching this video. They probably have already made their decision if they're going to summon for Arjuna Alter, Morgan, or save till the end of the year for whenever Kukulkan comes out. Those people probably aren't watching this. The newer players that are probably wanting to find someone that is easier to use are probably watching this, and I would just tell you, it's probably better to go for one of the 50% battery guys. And it is very unfortunate that Morgan is another 50% battery dude that is also a berserker and has 3 different power mods that give her really good utility in different stages. Even though technically Arjuna Alter brings his power mod everywhere, I do just want to warn people, and I'm not saying that don't summon for him because of this, right? But just know that it's a little bit more effort, especially if you're more new on to the game. Like if you are someone who doesn't have as much of a built-up account, you're going to need to go for those append skills, and you probably need to make sure that you actually have Oberon. So for wave 3, you have Arjuna Alter's 30% and you have Oberon 70%. Sometimes the 50% guys, like say Waver, just don't work with them. Because think about it this way. Say you're like a newer player, you may have Koyansky, but you don't have Oberon, right? Maybe you missed him on his most recent raid up, which hopefully some of you guys did get him. But think about it like this. You have, say, a 50% starting charge CE, you go ahead and fire Arjuna Alter's battery, plus the 20% append skill, you can immediately go for turn 1, all right? So you're perfectly fine. Then the Koyanskys give you their double battery on wave 2, that gets you to 100%. Then you move into wave 3, you have your Waver plug suit in, you get 50%. Then you have Arjuna Alter give himself the 30%. Now you're 20% shy. And unfortunately, none of the plug suits give you an additional 20% battery, so you really do need Oberon for some of those setups. Now, that's also not really just an Arjuna Alter exclusive problem. This is more of an exclusive problem with just 30% battery servants getting a little bit of the shaft compared to the 50% battery servants that are just way easier to use. You don't necessarily need Oberon. You don't even necessarily need to plug suit with the 50% battery servants. If you come out to any of my streams, and this is very high end, I'm not saying that everybody can do this, but I do have, a maximum broken scope, so I can just fire my first NP, use Morgan's 2 batteries to give her 50%, then have another Koyansky give her 50% battery, that's 100% for wave 2, and then the last Koyansky gives the battery plus the cooldown to Morgan on the final wave. That plus the Atlas Academy cooldown allows me to get back to 100% for wave 3, right? That's a very high-end thing that you could still do if you don't have a maximum broken scope, but you just want the better stats, maximum broken. But even if you have a normal scope and the append skill, you could still do it that way. Although, at that point, you would still be going for an append skill for that kind of convenience, which you would still do for Arjuna Alter, but at the very least, you wouldn't also need to still have Oberon. You get what I'm saying. That's why I opened up with saying, hey, he is really good if you want to bring him into some boss fights, because he's one of those guys that kind of just rushes down the boss and aims to beat them as quickly as possible. But I do think there are better servants to go for in that regard. Again, Morgan's going to be coming out in about a month, and I think she's very exceptional into challenge quests. And Kukulkan is going to be coming out towards the end of the year, and she is also very good into challenge quests. So while Arjuna Alter has been one of those servants that has treated me very well over the years, and is still somebody that I will break out and use every so often because I really like his first ascension, I think it looks super dope. I don't know if it's the servant for everyone, I don't know if this is still, year 3, 4, where Arjuna Alter was a bit better before, we really started getting into arts farming and the different buster farming that we have nowadays, where you can still use him. He's not obsolete in those metas, but I do almost feel in a way that he's falling off ever so slightly, that he's starting to really feel the effect of that 30% battery, kind of limiting him in certain team comps where we don't have that flexibility. Because say in that Morgan example, you know, what if I'm doing a 90++ node and I want to also bring a single target? Well, now I'm fully free to go ahead and bring in that single target as well, kind of swap my party up a little bit because Morgan is a little bit more self-sufficient. That's also just a thing that Morgan has split batteries, but that's also, again, another topic for another day of why having these split batteries is very convenient, and why having a 50% solid one battery might start to become also a little bit obsolete. You know, instead of having just 150, having a 20 to 30 or a 30-30, something along those lines might become a little bit better in the future. But again, different discussion for a different day. But let me know if you're going to be summoning for Arjuna Alter in the comments down below. I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts here from my own personal experience using Arjuna Alter on both versions of the game, you know, using him on NA where I have all of the big supports and everything. It's fully stocked. I've got like really good CEs all max level, so I can really use him to high effectiveness. And then, you know, JP, I don't have any of the busted supports aside from Merlin, so when I do use him, it's more of a low to the ground type of environment where we're not going for these crazy, insane Oberon a million bajillion damage, and he still does really well for me. You know, I like bringing him out for some of those quests. I mean, I even, when I was streaming through Lost Belt 6 the first time, as soon as, you know, Morgan got, spoiler alert if you haven't, you know, finished Lost Belt 6, I brought Arjuna Alter to the majority of those battles, and it was realistically around the Barghest and the Cernunos fight where I was like, okay, I don't think I can use Arjuna Alter to burn down Faye Britain anymore. I think he might be struggling a little bit, but I don't doubt that it's possible, right? Maybe for Barghest. I don't know about Cernunos. I think he might get bodied by that one. If anybody has done that, let me know in the comments down below. You know, I'll heart that comment. That's definitely impressive in my books. But with that being said, I'm starting to ramble. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace late, guys.